yes. No wine, but okay, we're recording. Welcome to the very first episode of the We Were Young podcast, working title. I'm Dave Merlino. With me, as always, no matter how much I try to shake him, is Dustin Sweet. I try. And before we begin, I guess I should do the unveiling of whatever hat I'm going to wear today to cut down on the glare. And I can go with the old standby American flag trucker cap. I never thought I'd like a trucker cap, but I had to get it for the school auction when we did the denim and diamonds. That was the first year we did the Fun to Need video for them. I actually have a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you had those arm tattoos.
I know that cost a lot of money to get those laser removed after, but it was worth it. You like that, Doc?
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, they're actually sleeves. I can bring it down when we visit you in Florida. We can get a picture of you with the full tats.
Dave, you still got your Dustin, you still got your tats, right?
Yeah, I kept mine.
You kept yours.
Yeah.
Oh.
His aren't fake. So for today's podcast, we have a special guest who we've known for quite a few years now through our documentary Apache Blues Welcome Home. He joined the Army you were about what, 19, Doc?
18.
18. Joined the Army at 18. Served 1 year in Vietnam as a combat medic for Apache Troop in the 1st of the 9th Cavalry, 1970 to 71. You may know him if you've seen the CBS News footage as Del Valle, as Richard Del Valle called him, but his name is actually Richard Del Valle. For those of you who've wondered if he made it out of Vietnam since that video, yes, he did. Welcome to the future, Doc.
Thank you, Dave.
So, and actually, it's been 50 years now since that video.
50 years, yep.
Yeah. What do you say it was at? How many views was it? 9 million or 10 million?
Well, we're almost. I would say in another month it'll be over 10 million.
Yeah, it's at like 9,800,000 right now.
Something like that. Yeah.
What's that like for you? I mean, we've talked to Craig, and Craig's the one who got shot in it, so he's forever, attached to that. But for you, I mean, you'll be forever 19 in that video on combat. Does it still stir emotions for you to see it, or
yeah, you look at yourself and you say, Jesus, that's how I looked 50 years ago, and you can't believe 50 years have gone by. But and to think, we never thought that we'd see so many views on today with this video. We thought it would be just lost in the files of CBS News. Richard Del Valle, when we were leaving to get picked up on the helicopters that afternoon after we medevac Craig, he says, you think your mother and father would be impressed when you see you on TV? And I says, yeah, right. They're going to show this like this is the only news. And sure enough, that week on Good Friday, they showed it on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And it was unbelievable. My parents were so shocked and just went absolutely wild when they saw it. But
I mean, it's not like when they showed it, you had Skype or the internet to watch it in country. When was the first time you actually saw it?
About a year later.
Wow.
After I got home. And back then, my mother had written to CBS News, and they sent her a 16 millimeter film of it. So back then, the only way you could watch it is on a 16 millimeter projector. And it's not like today where you can record it and 2 seconds later you can have half the world see it.
Actually, That's funny. I've been going through my dad's estate, and look what I found.
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
A little projector here.
Yep, yep. Well, that's that could be an 8mm, right? Or is it?
Yeah, I think it's a Super 8.
Yeah, I mean, back then, Super 8 movie theaters, and a lot of them didn't even have sound.
Yeah.
So if you've got any Super 8s when we visit you in Florida, we can watch it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a lot of old films, you know, from family, which we're going to convert to DVD.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I never, my wildest dreams would ever think that this would, you know, so many people would be watching it and interested in it. And it was something, you know.
Is there a specific quote that people keep bringing up to you?
Yeah,
That
give me
maybe
cover. And the reason why I said that is I just happened to run up and I just happened to stop where the cameraman and Richard Threlkel, matter of fact, I stepped on Richard Threlkel because he was in the way of the trail. And, you know, you're not watching everything. So I stepped on him, and then I happened to look over and I saw the cameraman filming with the recording guy. And I said to myself, maybe I should say something. And I couldn't think of anything else except that.
Oh, that's so good.
So I just, from there, I just said it. And Jack Hughley was in the background saying, come on, come on, come on. And I almost like said, I don't see anybody else running.
The cameraman didn't follow you up there, I noticed.
What's that?
The cameraman didn't follow you up to Craig.
Nobody did. Nobody. And it just happened to just play right when Dwayne Bloor was on the 60 machine gun, where they caught him firing at the same time. Like it was almost like a choreograph of the whole thing. You know, we rehearsed this whole thing before.
Yeah, well, that does
actually like every day for a couple months at that point, right?
What's that?
I said you and Dwayne had rehearsed that for a couple months at that
point.
Oh,
yeah. We did that many times, yeah. But
well, that does bring a question, because on the YouTube video, I'd say at least once a week or once every couple of weeks, someone comments that it's fake. Because how did the cameras know to be filming Dwayne, and how did they know this? And it was all fake, which is more of an indictment of today's media, probably, that people are
right.
You know, but for you, who was in that video, how does that make you feel to have people think it's a fake video?
It's just like the moon landing. That was fake. You know, I mean, you're gonna have you have critics all over the place. You know what they say about opinions. Everybody's got one. So
and they're all
you take the good with the bad. You know, or the bad with the good. You know, but I'd say 98% of the people are. Well, we got almost 10 million hits, so it's got to be something.
Something.
You know?
Craig says he doesn't get a Purple Heart every time someone watches him get shot, though.
Yeah. Well, right now he'd have 10 million Purple Hearts, so he'd outdo Audie Murphy.
So actually, going back, so you joined the Army at 18.
Yep.
How did you come about to join it? Was it your choice, or did you volunteer, or were you volunteering?
I volunteered, but let me see. When I was just ready to go to medical training, the Army, the U.S. Army sent a notice to my house saying, you've been invited to join us. And my mother called the Selective Service and said, he's in the Army right now. Matter of fact, he's in Texas at Fort Sam Houston. So their reply is, he better be here Monday morning or we'll send the military police after him. So my mother called me and says, you know, they want to arrest you. I says, well, they know where to find me. So, but nothing ever happened.
So they would have sent the military police to the Army base to arrest you for not joining the Army.
Correct. but that
That
was
sounds like my
typical government.
that sounds like my government career.
But I went from Fort Dix to Fort Sam Houston for medical training. And I figured why I joined the Army. It looked like they were grabbing everybody. So I figured, let me get my training in the summer instead of the winter. I could just see myself at some cold base doing winter training. So from there, we had about.
Doc, what was the medical training like? Was it just like basic EMT and hard wound stuff, or what?
Yeah, they touched on just about everything. Don't forget, they crammed 10 weeks of training, and they said, don't worry about it. The rest you'll learn on the field. So that's how it is, just like the infantry. You know, the rest you'll learn. OJT, they used to call it OJT.
Hopefully not learning it by like, oh, I shouldn't do that one again.
It was an experience, but you know what? Out of, I think there was 850 medics in our class, 750 went to Vietnam. So it's not like out of 800, there were only like 10 and you were one of the 10. So,
Right.
I mean, everybody went. So when you became a medic, you knew you were going anyway. And they gave us 30-day leaves, went home, and at least I had Christmas at home that year. And then the next month I was in Vietnam in January of 1970. And as I was getting orders, you know, they said, okay, you're going to the 1st Air Cav. So I said, what's that like? Oh, don't worry. They see a lot of combat. Great. But you might go to a hospital or something. You don't know. So I said, okay. So the next set of orders, you're going to the 1st and 9th. What's the 1st and 9th? Oh, you'll love them. That's a reconnaissance unit. They fly helicopters. You fly into battle and you fly out. Great. So I get up to the 1st and 9th Squadron to the aid station. They said, me and another fellow who's a very good friend of mine, Dominic Cavalier, we both got in the same day and we both left Vietnam the same day. The flight surgeon said, well, who wants Apache Troop and who wants Bravo Troop? So I says, I'll take Apache Troop. You'll love it up there. It's a nice base, great bunch of guys. You'll have a lot of fun. And my first 10, 15 minutes in Apache Troop, I had my first 2 casualties. 2 scouts were getting into their Loach and a 122 rocket landed right in front of them.
Wow.
So I was immediately doing my combat medic training.
Had you even checked into your hooch yet, or you just gotten there?
I just dropped my gear, and all of a sudden there was an explosion behind where we had these hooches where we kept our gear and we slept because we were kind of lucky. We came in at night. 99% of the time we would come in at night. We would just do our day missions, whether it's from down helicopters or reconnaissance work or something. But we were lucky, and with that, you know, you had at least you could take a shower at night. You can change your clothes. You had one hot square meal during the day, and you lived halfway decent. Not like some of the grunt units where you stayed out 2-3 weeks. You lived in the weather all 24 hours out of the day. You got rained on. It was hot. You were sweated. You went to bed sweated and uncomfortable. You only ate C rations. Once in a while, they used to get hot meals flowing out. But we considered ourselves very lucky.
Well, that kind of leads into your comment about the rocket attack, kind of leads into my next question. So that was kind of technically your first taste of quote unquote combat, but for you,
Yep.
as a 19-year-old, what was it like? I mean, or what's your recollection about the first time you're in the field and bullets start flying? Like, did that change you as a person, or was that just kind of this is real life now? What was that like the first time you were in combat?
The first time I was in combat and the shooting started, I said, boy, they're not kidding around here. They really mean serious business. And it's not until you see actually somebody getting wounded, whether our side or seeing a dead or wounded NVA soldier, that's when it really gets real. And when you start seeing the dirt get kicked up in front of you, then you know they mean serious business, and you better get tough yourself. I guess there's an old World War II saying, kill or be killed. And unfortunately, that's what you have to do. And you got to be there to understand what goes on. By me telling you, it's still like, okay, I've seen it on all these movies. I saw it on Saving Private Ryan. But when you're actually in combat, you get a whole different perspective of life. And sometimes people take it for granted, But
I mean, talking about movies, we've talked around walls before about We Were Soldiers, and he said some of the critics have kind of dinged him for that, for a soldier saying, as he was dying, tell my wife I love her. And they're saying, that's all just machismo. And so, I mean.
No, guys will cry for their mothers, and they will cry for their loved ones. There's no fooling around with that. That's real. That's real. Especially when you're looking in their eyes. People know when they're going to die.
And we've talked to other soldiers who have, obviously it's a tough thing. You've got to get back up and you've got to go back out the next day, like when Tim McCray was killed and Joe Sanchez and Gary Qualley were medevaced out. I know that was before your time, but, you see your friends die, but you still got to go back. That's from a soldier. But for you, as the man sitting next to them out in the field and hearing them cry for them.
They're looking at you. They're looking at you because they got their life in your hands now. Even a minor wound, guys, a platoon will go out without a lieutenant or the platoon sergeant, but they refuse to go out when there's no medic. Guys put up a lot of fights they want a medic there. They because if something happens, they want somebody to be there to give them the aid. And that's they'd rather go out with a few less men than without the medic. And that I've always managed to go out on every mission.
Did that end up putting a lot of pressure on you? Did you feel that pressure while you were there?
Sometimes, but most of the time, it was a job. It was a job. You had to do it. There was no, well, I don't feel like going out today. This is when you're in combat, you're not doing normal things. It's not a job. It's life and death. There's no fooling around. You make a mistake, you're dead. You make a mistake, you may kill others. That's why it's important that, people around you are aware of what's going on. Everybody's got to be sharp. There's no, I'm thinking about what's going to happen when I go home. You can't do these things. Somebody's life is on the line. Somebody will get killed.
As a medic, this might not be a question that you can quantify, but as the medic, were you more concerned? Obviously, you have concern for your life, but are you more concerned for your life or for keeping, you've got the whole troop's lives in your hand to an extent? Like, what would you think about in terms of that?
Both, but, here again, the guy walking point, he can get killed in an instant. With me, if I had to run up or do something, well, it's my turn now to, do my job. And it's not heroism, or it's just doing your job. Guys are counting on you. You failed somebody's life. And that's the way it is. It's your turn to hit that home run. The team is looking at you.
Yeah. And you did carry a rifle as a medic, right?
Oh yeah. Because it's not like World War II where we had the Geneva Convention. Unfortunately, if I got separated, or if if nobody got wounded, the first thing you become is an infantryman. You have to, you got to you got to wear many hats. Somebody gets wounded, okay, I become the medic now. Nobody's wounded and we're ambushed, well, you're an infantryman now. Just like on down birds, whatever it takes to do something, you got to do it, and you got to wear many hats. And a lot of other guys wore many hats too. If I can't get to them, some guys would, help somebody that was wounded, and until I got to them. But everybody worked as a team, a very close, well-machined, oiled machine you'd have to work as.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the first times I talked to Craig, one of our first interviews, he said that as a soldier, it's really easy to teach soldiers how to kill the enemy, but when you've got a wounded comrade next to you, they didn't teach you how to save their life as a soldier.
Right.
And that was the worst feeling in the world to him. So he admires you for your ability to be able to do that.
Well, like I said, the whole platoon is looking at you, when somebody's wounded, sometimes you're like a god, you don't want to see anybody die, but, you do your best to pull them through.
And you have the morphine.
Yeah, I had the morphine. I made them feel good.
Dustin, you look like you were going to talk.
Nope, no.
He's not the best.
He's going to make morphine jokes, but then I didn't have any, so sorry.
He's not the best co-director in the business for nothing.
Kind of a downer.
Yeah. So let's, like we talked about before we started recording, this isn't so much about your time in Vietnam, because a lot of podcasts can do the tell me about this day, tell me about this day. Really, this is about, as a veteran, what it's like to come home in that transition. And Vietnam vets, for various reasons, some good, some bad, have a lot of experience to be able to pass on to generations of veterans about making that. But, in terms of coming home, would you say you were the same person as you left, a different person? Like, what was the Doc Del Valle coming home compared to the one who left?
Completely different. I think you just about see everything in life when you've been in combat. And I was overseas. I was in the service. I was in combat. I've when I was in the aid station, I was the senior medic, and you make decisions like, okay, somebody has to go to the field today, and you don't want to send somebody out, but sometimes you have to send somebody out, and hopefully they don't get wounded or killed that day. It's not like on a job where you're saying, um, okay, you do this job. There, if you say, hey, you got to go out with with another blue platoon, if you get killed, well, it's too bad. You didn't want to see them, but that's the way it goes. But coming home, I was very lucky. Me and my friend, we left Oakland. We flew back. He lived in Batavia, New York. I lived in Teaneck, New Jersey. And we made it back with no incidents at the airport. Nobody spit at us. Nobody threw garbage at us. And we were lucky. I mean, some of my buddies got spit at, cursed at. And I like I said, I was lucky.
How did it change your relationships when you got back? Did you hang out for a while? Did you go back to work right away? What did you?
To be truthful, I went back at the end of the week when I got home. Wow. I was already working. I figured, well, back to civilian life. Got to make money.
Other orders? What were you doing for work?
I was in the flower business, in the wholesale florist business. And I worked for a Jersey wholesaler. And basically, I from there on, I worked. I went to night school at Fairleigh Dickinson University for about a year. And just, carried on like normal, like before I went in the service.
Was that an awkward transition to be 1 week in Vietnam and 5 days later you're working, or did that help you transition to get right into it?
I got into the work because I loved the job I was doing. And now I'm trying to think back 50 years ago what happened, but one thing I did find out, you didn't talk about being in Vietnam because nobody wanted to hear about it. Nobody cared. And if you did talk about it, they looked at you like you just got out of prison, and people like turned their back on you.
Even if you ran into other vets?
Excuse me?
Did you run into other vets? Were there?
Yeah, a few. And again, they did the same thing. They really didn't talk about it too much. It's not until I would say the last 5-10 years that we've been able to, speak more freely about what happened. What I find out is more people said they were in Vietnam, and you find out that just to hear themselves talk, it's like, well, that's the coolest thing to say. I was in Vietnam too, but a lot of people, guys like me and millions of others, didn't say much about the war or talk about it. I think there was just too much bad publicity. People were tired of it. They just didn't want to hear it.
And to clear up, because the soldiers and the veterans actually, in many cases, not every, like you said, you didn't have the protesters there, but there were a lot of protesters greeting the soldiers home, and the transference onto the soldiers like it was their fault that they were there. just to clear something up, did you, Doc Del Valle, declare war on Vietnam for the United States?
No, I was the one in the millions that had to go there and do a job. That was
You
it.
weren't, you weren't in on any of the discussions?
No, I wasn't in when President Johnson or Nixon made decisions.
They didn't.
And
They
said-
didn't invite you to Paris. You weren't.
What's that?
They didn't invite you to Paris. You didn't get to go.
No, I didn't go to the
talk
peace
about-
talks. I didn't talk with Schlesinger and
Short straw.
I was just one of the average person going there, just doing the job. And to be truthful, for a war that nobody wanted, everybody performed, like North Vietnam had just invaded the United States and we're getting back at them.
Wow.
Everybody did their job over there.
That's the way to come home.
Yep.
Did
And it was, people that weren't in the service, they should really, it should be still mandatory to go into the service. I think there would be a lot less problems today. Disciplinary problems.
They do instill that in you pretty quick.
Absolutely.
You came home. It's not like today where you guys leave as a unit and come back as a unit. You had the staggered return, so there was always a cycle of experienced people in the unit in Vietnam. Right. But that means you came home alone.
Right.
Not only were you back to work, like you're immediately, like there was no one to talk to, as you said,
Nope.
But not even any of your other veterans. There was no Facebook or internet.
The VA was there was non-existent with the VA.
it was just an idea, right? It hadn't rolled out yet.
I'm sorry.
The VA, it hadn't really rolled out yet, right? They were just.
The VA was always around for World War II, everything. They just basically, if you weren't seriously wounded and they didn't treat you, it's completely different today. I mean, you got where you have PTSD classes. The guys coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan and all that, they have all the medical treatment and completely different. Back then, the VA says, not our problem, pal.
You look fine to me.
Yeah. As long as you were in one piece, you were okay. And if you got a mental problem, go see a psychiatrist. Don't bother us.
They didn't really start understanding what is now, commonly PTSD, becoming more accepted to call it PTS because it's not a disorder. It's just you've had a different experience than Dustin and I have.
Right.
But they didn't start learning that until, what was it? It was shell shock and battle fatigue. Like they didn't know. I mean, you guys were the not only the testing ground for the helicopter war, but the testing ground for how you treat PTS and stress from coming home.
Plus, we didn't get support really from the United States during the war. Like I said, people didn't want to know it. Not our problem.
Well, didn't you find in one of the North Vietnamese caches some donations from Berkeley?
We found a case of blood plasma, and on the case it said, donated to the people of North Vietnam from the people of Berkeley, California. And, I can understand if they were sending blood to hospitals in North Vietnam to help civilians, but this is for the enemy soldiers that we were fighting. And there was a lot of things that we saw that people wouldn't believe today. They wouldn't believe.
Was that like a gut check for you to see that?
It made us sick. It made us sick. I think a few guys said, and this is what we're fighting for.
Did you think back to that when you had been home in the States for a while? Did you think back to that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a lot fresher in your mind then
Right.
than today, and you just say, oh, whatever, But back then, and when you saw a lot of the rioting going on and the demonstrations, and there was when we did the first day of the Cambodian invasion. We heard it was actually an article in Stars and Stripes that two guys were sitting at a bus stop in uniform, and a bunch of college kids went over and almost literally killed them. They beat them, they hit them with bottles, rocks, everything, just because they were wearing uniforms.
Wow.
So there was a lot of things that went wrong. And thank God we don't see it today with the kids in Afghanistan, Iraq. You come home, at least you get greeted, and people say thank you for your service. Back then, they tell you should have been killed over there. You would have done us a favor.
Like literally, Craig got those letters after he was shot.
Yeah, he got them when we. I didn't read any of them, but he was telling us about them that he got, and he says, and back then, it's not like he made this up. It was like he was in shock, in absolute shock. And like we said, well, what are we here fighting for?
Yeah. For those who don't know, after Craig Jorgensen was shot in front of the CBS cameras, he got, as he calls it, fan mail from the States saying, I saw you get shot. I hope you lose your legs. The war's wrong. You're wrong. Stuff like that.
One person even wrote, he said, I hope you die.
To a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and he's
just doing his job. That if you want to get mad, yell at the president, yell at the senators, yell at the Congress. They're the guys that made the decisions.
Looking back at your life as a civilian, Doc, how much did your experiences in Vietnam shape your own personal political beliefs and how you lived your life? Like the decisions you make about where to live and what to do.
I think you're a little more aware of what's going on today, and sometimes you read into things. You get a little too crazy at reading into things, but sometimes you can't trust the government and what they're saying in the future. I think another one was when we invaded Iraq in 2002, and he was our government said that he had mass weapons of destruction. We never found them. So some of the examples of you can't trust what the government says at times.
But looking at that in terms of coming home, like we said, you came home alone, immediately back to work. No one wants to talk to you. You have no idea what's going on with your friends still in country. I don't want to lead you into an answer, so I'm trying to ask this open-ended. Was there any general feelings? Was it anger, despair?
There was anger. There was anger. But here again, sometimes you would say, well, get over it, because nobody's going to listen to you. You're going to be an angry person, and you're not going to get anywhere. So, you just kind of put it out of your mind, and life goes on, and, you look at our fathers from World War II, they came home all right, granted, they got greeted, they were heroes, they were this, they were that, but they went on with life, you know? They didn't sit there and cry in their coffee and say, oh, woe is me. You know, you move on. And I think 90% of the Vietnam veterans just moved on. I would say 95% of the Vietnam veterans became productive in their lives where they contributed to society and not become a hindrance on society. We have a lot of guys in our documentary. We're all successful people. We have bankers. We have people that own businesses. We have an author. We have people that run companies. Everybody produced. We didn't become a burden of the government and saying, woe is me, you guys did this to us. You know, we all produced and we all moved on with our lives.
And, you know, we first met you 4 years ago. Yeah. Ooh.
About 4 or 5 years ago, yeah.
4 years ago in Las Vegas for our first interview.
Right.
Was that the first time you had sat down with a outside entity? You know, we're not your family. We're not, you know,
Right.
anything, you know, we weren't in your unit with you. Just sit down and talk about your experiences. Was that kind of your first time doing that?
Yes, that was the first time.
So
were we gentle enough? Were we okay with you?
Oh, you guys were perfect. You were gentlemen.
Oh, gentlemen, that's been applied to us so often.
Yeah.
What was that? I mean, we had only met 24 hours before we talked, 24 or 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We rolled into Vegas for your guys' mini reunion. You put a lot of trust in us, obviously, between the start of the interview and the end of the interview. Like, what was that like for you to actually finally talk?
In the beginning, it was just a little tough at first. Like, Jesus, what are they going to ask me? What am we going to talk about and all that? But as we talked, it became easier and easier to talk to you and explain things. And I guess that was really the first time. Outside of that, I mean, I have been in what they have, the VA now has these PTSD classes, what we call, and we do discuss things in the class. And in the class, there's basically all Vietnam veterans. 90% of us have been in combat. 90%, I mean, all of us have the same problem, you know. But you guys did very, very well, very good on that interview. And I think you really, you did a lot more than what the VA can do.
I'm above you, Dustin.
Oh yeah, and yours? Are you up? That's all this guy. That's all I have.
You're pointing at Doc.
What's that?
Oh, nothing. It's going to be reversed anyway. Just point in every direction.
That's all these guys.
Yeah.
So then we followed up with you a year later at your home in Florida. You know, a year had passed, and the reason that we did that is because, you know, a lot of you guys, when we talked to you the first time, you know, when we turned off the camera, and unfortunately we couldn't get this in the documentary because the camera was literally had to be turned off for this phenomenon. But I distinctly remember seeing it with Dwayne, because as soon as the camera turned off, there was a bit of a, and you know, like Ed said, you know, this was good. I want to talk to my daughter. It's easy to say that in the moment, but we wanted to see how that would go. You know, a year later, do you still feel that you know, talking was beneficial? And that's why we followed up. You know, now we're several years removed from that first interview. Do you think that sitting down and finally talking about your experience did have, I don't want to use the word impact or change, but
It did have an impact. It had an impact. It did. It was like all this built up in you, and finally, somebody's listening to what's going on, and hopefully, this documentary is going to help a lot of veterans, whether past veterans or veterans of present. Help them, get through. The guys today, I feel bad for them because they have to go 2, 3, 4, 5 times into a combat zone. And that's a little bit much. And
it's just a continuation.
People don't realize.
Curve, right?
What's that?
It's just a continuation of the curve, right? Like the World War II guys, they'd see 2 or 3 battles, and that'd be that. And then you guys saw in Vietnam, you saw a bunch of battles over the course of a year, right?
Right. Because here again, the helicopter could pick you up, put you in another area, and you could be in combat. We've been on reconnaissance missions. They picked us up. They put us in for a down bird. We took care of it. If it was a minor crash, we would take care of it. And then they'd pick us up again and put us someplace else that day. Yeah. So like one day you can go into 3 different zones of combat, and it's all part of that day's business, where the World War II soldier, the only way you can get like an army is from them. We were mechanized and all that, but we didn't have what we have today, where you could pick up a battalion and land them within minutes into a battle. But
if you, on that first mission of the morning, you had the quote that sometimes you had to shoot your way in and shoot your way out to the down bird. If you had that in the morning, as a police officer, if you get, I never was in a shooting, but you're pulled off the line for a while. If you're in a gunfight that morning, would they say, okay, you guys need to calm down, or it's like, hey, keep going?
March. Well, we've been where we've, it might have been a minor one, but we still, it wasn't like, okay, you guys had a good day today, we're going to give you a day off. Next day, you could be in, they could have a down bird. There's no rest. It's like the fire department or the police department. Just because you guys solved a bank robbery or broke up a bank robbery, you still have, there's no rest. There could be a car accident. There could be another shooting. There could be a bad fire where people are trapped and you got to help the fire department or something. So there's no rest. There's no rest in war. They say rest is 2 ways. Either you're dead, or when the war is over, then you can rest.
Have you gotten much rest, though? For most people we talk to, the nighttime isn't exactly your best friend.
Sometimes it can be a little hairy at night. At times you're talking, you're moaning sometimes. My wife says a lot of times, she asks me, are you all right and all that? And I wake up and I say, why'd you wake me up? And she says, you're talking. There's something wrong. I said, no, nothing. And sometimes you don't remember any of this stuff, the dreams and stuff. And, like I've said before, when was the last time you were in Vietnam? Last night. And
even 50 years later?
50, I think even if I still have my my senses 100 years later, you're still going to think about it.
and I think that's actually good that you're willing to talk about that because, like we said, we've talked to the troops who've come home from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're still not
Yeah.
every single one. They're still learning how to
Right.
transition back to the Army is doing a lot more, but I mean,
Absolutely.
but they're still learning how to return home. And for you to say, no, like, sleepless nights are a thing. You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a thing. Like,
Yep.
what would you say if you had a chance to sit down? Would you want to sit down with modern vets and talk? Like, you guys are kind of the mentors.
Well, we in this class we had some guys that came back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and problem is it's still fresh in their minds. Now you're talking to guys that, like we had one World War II veteran. I mean, he still talks like he was there yesterday, and that was 75 years ago. Unfortunately, he passed away. He was in his 90s, but like with us now, we're getting 50 years. Some guys, because this war's been going on since 65, 64, they got like 56, 55, 56 years they've been out of the war. It's still fresh in your mind, You'll never forget those things. You'll forget what you had for breakfast, but you'll never forget what you did 50, 60 years ago.
And
go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Do you think that it might be intimidating to a recently returned guy? The idea that it's just going to stick around, or do you think that there's ways to talk about it where that's just how life is now, and you can still have a good quality of life with?
Yeah, there's ways, and I think by talking about it and talking to other guys that have been in the same situation as you, you can work out problems. Sometimes you might, you wonder, hey, did this guy have it as bad, or did you have it worse, or did you have it better? Did you lose a lot of people in your unit? Did everybody make it home okay? It's good to talk about it with other veterans. Talking to the public about it, it's not like a movie where you can, and you can't relate to other people about it. As they say, you can't relate unless you've been there. And
we weren't there though, and you talked to us.
What's that?
We weren't there, and you were able to.
I know, but it seems like you guys understand. You've been around us long enough now, and you've done a lot of research. It's true. I mean, you guys haven't been there. You weren't even born, right?
No.
No offense, but no.
No, I applaud you guys because you've taken time to do this and to take interest in and take interest in our lives, and trying to explain this, to the rest of the world, what's going on, what we went through. And some people have gone through it and completely put it out of their heads and like, Jesus, I think I was there, and but I'd say 99% of us, we still remember what went on.
Well, and when we talked to Dr. Clymer, in Texas. The
Mhm.
former head of specialized care at Walter Reed, and does a lot of PTS. He was actually a very central figure in how we've kind of figured out a lot of this. He was talking about how when soldiers come home, and stop me if you disagree with anything that I'm about to say
Just
from
stop.
him, you go to war, so you volunteered, and you literally volunteered to go do this thing so other people wouldn't have to. Like, you took it upon yourself to put that on your shoulders to protect others from having to do it. So the last thing you want to do is come home and tell everyone about the horror of it, because then what have you know, psychologically thinking, what have I really saved them from? You know, so you don't want to talk about it, but, you know, he was talking about, especially between, say, husbands and wives. Like, that is probably one of the most important things a soldier can do, is to talk to their wife or to their husband. You know, for you guys, it was men at war, but now there's men and women being deployed. You know, to talk to your spouse
Yeah.
about it, to have, you know, so there's not that big gulf in your marriage. Like, it can drive a wedge
Mhm.
if a spouse or a child or a parent, anyone wanted to talk. Like, for you as a veteran, what would be your advice for a family member to try and, or to a veteran to talk to their family? What would be your advice for that?
Well, if a family doesn't show any interest and say he's crazy, you know, the war really messed his mind up, and you don't want to hear it. You know, it's like, again, people turning their back. If your own family turns your back on you, you know, you say, Jesus, uh, where's the relationship? But if a family shows interest, and a lot of families do now help, and you know, they talk to their parents or talk to you know, spouses and all that. My wife is very much interested in what's going on, and it helps. It helps. If a wife says, or a husband says, I don't want to hear it. It's not my problem. You're the one that did it. You know, it's like, huh, what am I fighting for? You know, not even my own family cares.
Yeah.
And
So, continuing on that line, though, the spouse has come to the veteran, and I learned a lot, you know, because I was the one interviewing. Dustin was doing sound, and Charles was running the
mhm.
camera. It was weird for me because the camera was right here, and you were, what, maybe 3 feet away from me.
Right, sitting on the
And
couch there.
so I had um, to allow for the edit to time to be able to cut, I had to pause. I couldn't immediately talk, and that taught me actually a lot about listening, because there was times when I say, okay, it's time to talk again, and then you guys would talk more,
Right.
and that's where a lot of the interesting stuff came out. And I thought I was a good listener. I think I'm a better listener now, but
Hmm.
looking back from my perspective, I think that it was that accidentally led to a way to make it comfortable for you guys, because I wasn't trying to solve any of your problems. Like, I
Right.
wasn't trying to sit down. I just was there to listen to your story.
Right.
And so a spouse comes to a veteran and just wants to listen. Like, this isn't a, you know, I don't have to solve anything.
Right.
The spouse wants to listen to the veteran. What would you
Right.
tell the veteran?
Um, Listen to them and tell your story, but don't make it like it's don't tell war stories. Tell what you feel inside you. You know, it's still kind of hard for a lot of us to talk about things too. You know, it's a little hard. Um, Remember, for 50 years you kept your mouth shut. Now all of a sudden you become a speaker. You know, and it's tough. You know, it's tough. And here again, we're getting older. We're getting like, well, I went this far. You know, why should I open my mouth? You know.
Well, and also it's a process, right? I mean, it's not like
Right.
we're going to
Right.
have this one talk and everything's great. It's, you know, talk
I
about what
mean,
you're comfortable with.
since we've started this documentary, there was, I don't know, maybe if I didn't do it, maybe I'd not say anything or not, or if I didn't go to this PTSD class, maybe I'd still be one of the ones still building up inside me, you know, or just like, what war, you know, it's a past, you know, but yeah, this has helped a lot because we've been able to talk, and especially with the guys that I served with, everybody can communicate. We've all been there. We were there 50 years ago. We all went through the same thing, and now we can talk about it 50 years later, and it's a lot easier too. A lot of us we're actually calling each other up more like we're a close-knit family. Sometimes I talk to the guys more than I even talk to my own brothers and sisters at times, you know. But
I thought you were going to say to your wife, and I'm like, careful.
yeah,
Careful.
yeah.
Doc, what was the impetus for you to take that PTS class?
I'm sorry?
What was the impetus to you to take that PTS class?
They were saying, I had talked to some of the psychiatrists at the VA, and they said, we have a class where a bunch of guys get together.
Yeah.
You're all combat veterans. Most of you are from Vietnam. This might be a little easier for you to, you know, talk to others about it. And I did, and it was pretty. I've been going to it for about, I'd say almost 5 years. I've been going to it.
Nice.
And for a while it was every Friday. Then they changed it to every other week. So, and now, unfortunately, it's shut down because of the virus that's going on. But
did you have a preference every week versus every other week?
nope. I always look forward to going to it. It was, you know, you got friendly with everybody. Everybody would talk like, you know, I went through the same thing you did. So it was easier. It was easier to talk to the guys. And one of the things, some of the guys said, hey, coming here is like I got all my friends, because on the outside, I really don't have any friends, which is very true. You don't make friends with a lot of people. I mean, you try and be pleasant with people, but, you know, true friends, it's that certain bond that you have with this group.
Yeah. And when you guys get together, is there still the rivalry of branches? Like, do you guys still make fun of the Air Force?
Yeah, sometimes, like we have fellows in the Air Force, the Marines, the Army. Basically, that's basically it. And the Navy. I forgot the Navy.
Which says a lot right there. Yeah.
Well, we had one guy that was that's in there that's was in the brown water, and he tells us some crazy stories. And here again, you know, it's and all these guys that are in this class are have contributed to the to society, to the United States. They're managers, they're business owners, they're salespeople, but everybody contributed something, you know. Nobody is sitting there saying, I have to be supported by the government.
Yeah, when Dave and I were starting to look into Vietnam vets, we found this report that was how most Vietnam vets were part of the most well-educated army in the world at the time, and how you moved on to become some of the most prosperous Americans on the return. Do you remember where we found that?
No, well, it was saying like when you compare Vietnam veterans against their contemporaries,
Right.
they're actually more successful. And a lot of that, like they're saying, is some of the PTS is coming back now after the Vietnam veteran generation is retiring, because you guys, like you said, you know, Friday you're in Vietnam, next Friday you're at work in Teaneck, New Jersey. Just we're able to get into work and get right to work. And a lot of people have buried that, like work, 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 work. And now that they're retiring, all they did was kind of push the bill off. Like it didn't go away. Now they're facing a lot more, which is why I think your guys' message of it's never too late to talk about this can be helpful.
Well, a lot. We found out that when we came back, we went to work right away, and that helped, especially when you're working. You're keeping your mind busy. It's not like daydreaming. A lot of us now that are retiring, we have more time to think about things and stuff. But when you're working, and that's the best thing to do, if to get to work, do something. Don't sit there and think about it and dwell on it and think, oh, Jesus, I was, last week I was in a big battle and all that. Get back to work. Get back to work. Think of other things. And you'll, best therapy is working.
And even in retirement, you guys are
in retirement, you still got to do something. Volunteer. You know, sometimes we go out and we walk. We pick up papers for the neighborhood, the community. Craig does it. Craig cleans up all of Washington shores there. Do something. Don't sit at home and say, well, I'm retired. You know, you got to do something.
All right. So overall, a little bit of wrap up. Talk or not talk? Yay or nay? It's good or indifferent? Like, what would you tell veterans coming home?
Talk about it.
This has been a good experience.
Talk about it. Try and get back into society. Get on with your life. Get on with your family. Today, the government does offer a lot of things. The VA does. Take advantage of it, but don't abuse it. And enjoy life. Hell, you went through the worst thing in your life. Now enjoy it that you made it. You know, your friend might have died for you. So enjoy life.
Well, it's like that remember the line in Saving Private Ryan when Tom Hanks looks at Private Ryan and says, "Make this worth it. Earn this."
Yep.
And
well, you, as you said, you earn the right to live.
Yeah. You know, these guys died for you, so go out and live your best life to honor them. So, but then when he looks at his daughter and says, "Was I a good man?" then you're like,
well, that was his wife. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. He says, "Tell me if I was a good man," you know. And you know, he just went on with life and he enjoyed it, and he had his family and everything. So.
Did you not pay your electric bill, Dustin?
No, I'm standing next to. I got these big bay windows next to me, and
the sun moved on you.
Yeah, it's like me right now. The sun is hitting on this side with us.
Yeah, clouds just came over, so all of a sudden the webcam compensated, and all of a sudden it's like 4 f-stops shorter. So here we go.
All right. Well, that's what I have, and like I said, this is just a general. You know, we just want to sit down and talk with people and talk about their experience of coming home and allow you to impart. Like I said, we've talked about it before. Would you be willing to talk to younger veterans? And
yeah, why not?
Cool.
We do it in our PTSD class. You know, we try and talk to these guys.
Well, when we're allowed. by
Huh?
the government to go do that.
But no. I think if you get, you know, a couple of us to talk, like Tony Cortez, he can relate to these guys. I mean, he was commanding a lot of these guys, what, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, he went career.
Yeah, career command sergeant major.
Yeah. And he's still working.
Jack's still working.
Yep, Jack's still working.
You're
I'm kind
retired.
of like working, but enjoying life too. Who else? I bet Craig. I mean, he's got his things he's doing. Braun was working for a while, then he says, "That's it. I'm retired."
I think he's retired twice, and since
Yeah,
we've
he
known him.
did.
Yeah.
He did. He went back to work for a while, and then he's finally said, "That's it." Kathy's retired, so I think the two of them are really enjoying life.
So one last favor for me, the inner Italian in me. Can I get you in your New Jersey accent to say I was in the flower business?
I was in the flower business.
You know, you sound like a mobster when you say that, right?
Do I? It sounds like yeah. That was our business. It was family business.
There you go.
And never talk against the family.
Thank you. Perfect. Dustin, can you top that?
Doc, thanks for being here, man. I really
Okay.
appreciate your entire involvement in this project. It's
You guys, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be here.
No, you were here before us.
Huh?
Well,
yeah, but
are we going to have this round and round again where you guys thank us? And we're like, it wouldn't mean anything if you didn't want to talk to us, so thank you. And then we've never solved
Oh,
that.
yeah, we'll be saying thank you around for the next hour and a half.
It's good.
But was it a good interview?
I think so. We'll let the audience decide.
I guess we'll find out.
I'm going to hit stop on the recording, but don't hang up on us.
Okay, yep.